Hey everyone, welcome to week 24, day 4. This is our ongoing compositional studies week. So we've done Tiziano, Caravaggio, Rubens, and today we're going to do
Jusepe de Ribera.
Jusepe de Ribera. So we'll see how that goes. Okay, let's get started. Now, for today, we're actually going to go to Naples. We're going to go back to Italy. And it's a weird moment of Italy because Naples was actually part of the Spanish Empire. So there's a lot of Spanish influence in Naples at that moment. And this is super important because the painter that we're going to talk about is Jusepe Ribera. Jusepe Ribera is one of the most fantastic Baroque painters. He is a very strange mix because even though painters were aware that Italy was a powerhouse of Baroque painting at that moment, and most painters were sort of influenced by what was happening in Italy. The case of Jusepe Ribera is actually quite particular because he does have that knowledge and that influence of Zurbarán, Murillo, and obviously Velázquez. But when he moves to Rome, he actually becomes a follower of Caravaggio. And that is very, very evident in some of his early paintings. Eventually, he moved from Rome to Naples. I read that he did that because he owed his creditors money and he was just running away. So, painters, we haven't changed. And he actually never went back to Spain. He lived his whole life in Naples, and he was known as the Spanish painter that lived in Naples, El Españoleto. Because he was able to carry these two influences, there is a sense of these two schools of thought, these two, massive schools of painting really present in his own paintings. And it is a very, very particular thing. Like I said, this doesn't quite happen in the Baroque where you can feel, two distinct moments of painting in one painter. We were talking about Titian, and Titian feels Venetian. And we talked about Caravaggio, and he feels absolutely Italian. And we talked about Rubens, and he is 100% Flemish, even though he knew about Titian, even though he knew about Velázquez. But their awareness, didn't quite affect their painting. But Jusepe Ribera had these two schools that were really, really avidly present during his painting career. So one thing that's kind of peculiar about his painting and about his personality really is that he could do very loving and caring paintings, very sensible paintings, but he's actually really well known for his martyrdom paintings. He is super attracted to martyrs and to the way all these saints died, which most of the time were incredibly cruel and horrific and very, very graphic, and he loved to do those paintings. So he actually is known for some dark, very startling works, and you can tell that that was kind of in his blood because there was a school of painting of followers of Jusepe Ribera, and some of them are Salvatore Rosa and Luca Giordano, and you can see in both Rosa's and Giordano's painting that there is some darkness there. There is some horror in those paintings, and they obviously revered Jusepe Ribera. So you can kind of tell that that's where it came from. So this is a kind of shady painter we're talking about. I'm not saying he's perturbed or anything, but he had some notable attraction towards the gruesome, iconic imagery that was part of martyrdom paintings. And the painting that we're going to pick today is maybe not his most famous painting in terms of martyrdom. That would be the one of St. Philip, I would say. That's an incredible painting. It's fascinating. It's kind of mannerist. It's very Baroque also. But the painting that we're going to do today is actually the Martyrdom of St. Bartholomew. And he was actually flayed. And the story of St. Bartholomew is actually quite akin to the story of Marsyas, Apollo and Marsyas. And that mythological story has been recounted through painting a number of times, trying to link up what we had talked about in past days. There's a very late Titian painting that is a fantastic painting of the flaying of Marsyas by the hands of Apollo. And it's very peculiar because when a god, takes revenge on some earthly character, it is seen as something that is like okay, that's a divine act. You deserved it. You challenged the gods. And that's exactly what Marsyas did. He just challenged Apollo to a music contest and lost. And by losing, he lost his hide, his, skin, and his life. And, that was a sign of like, you're not supposed to challenge the gods. And the gods have all the right to then punish you for attempting to put yourself at the same level as they were. So if Apollo did this, it was like, yeah, Marsyas shouldn't have done that. But when you take that into Christianity and you realize that the subject of this martyrdom is going to be a saint, it's going to be St. Bartholomew, then the executioner behind this kind of sadistic act of flaying him, he's an animal. And that's what Jusepe Ribera is actually portraying. And he was, insanely character driven. And that's why probably he's one of my favorite Baroque painters ever, Jusepe Ribera, even over Caravaggio and even over Rubens and even over Van Dyck. And all of them that I just named are far more virtuoso than Ribera, I think. They're far more complete painters in many, many ways. But there's something about Jusepe Ribera that feels like he belongs to the streets. He is a very, very dirty, grounded painter that I love. And that's something that you kind of can't teach, really. And even in earlier paintings, where he had obviously all this influence from Caravaggio, there was just so much character to his work that you couldn't deny that this was going to be super, super important in Jusepe Ribera's career. And that's exactly what happens. He would take all these martyrdoms and put really characters in them that were just bursting with life. They were real people. I can't imagine the connection that observers would make with these paintings, because in essence, paintings of martyrdom were supposed to be messages that the church was sending you. To reach sanctity, you're supposed to make all these sacrifices. You're supposed to die this painful death for your church, for your God, for your spiritual beliefs. So imagine having these figures that belonged to the real world and really connecting with them and feeling that that was supposed to be your path. That if you were devout to your church, you were supposed to feel like that character. And this character actually reflected you in many, many ways. But the reason that I'm very, very attracted to this particular Jusepe Ribera's painting is because I kind of feel that this composition is just so strange. We were talking about the tons of diagonals that didn't really work in that first version of the conversion of St. Paul in Caravaggio's painting, and how he had to really distill that painting into a couple of characters, and he chose a peasant, a horse, and the Roman soldier that was Saul. And this kind of happens with this particular painting of Ribera. He was really, really attracted to this particular martyrdom, and he's painted a version of this painting that is actually prior to the flaying. And some people say in that painting, when the executioner saw the sanctity, the divine quality of St. Bartholomew, when he saw it in his eyes, then he kind of stopped for a second. And they think that that remorse was just the power of him being a saint, the power of God that was shining through through Saint Bartholomew. And that's a beautiful painting. But Ribera then does a painting where he's like, yeah, forget it. I'm going to paint the flaying. And he does a bunch of paintings of the flaying of Saint Bartholomew. And he actually, I think, loves the subject matter so much that he also paints the story of Marsyas and Apollo. So he loves painting the Christian story of the flaying of St. Bartholomew, and he loves painting the mythological story of Apollo flaying Marsyas. So he is attracted to some quite dark subject matter. But as I was saying, the reason that I love this particular painting and this particular composition is because of its starkness. The same distillation that Caravaggio had to go through with his own painting, you could kind of sense that Ribera was doing that, and he was just using the body as a tool to communicate composition, to almost extend itself to all the areas within the painting. And the martyrdom, the fact that there was a martyrdom being represented, was the perfect excuse to use the body in such a way. And it is so weird because it's a very almost mannerist body. It almost reminded me of a Parmigianino painting. The way it kind of curves in the bottom, it's kind of coming from the back. The shoulders are back. then the rib cage is kind of coming towards us, the pelvis actually kind of comes at us, and then it curves back towards inside the picture plane again. It's a very, very strange, kind of peculiar way of painting the figure, and Jusepe Ribera actually does that quite a lot in his paintings, but I find it fantastic that he recognizes that he can take something from the mannerist and, kind of bring it over towards the Baroque. So the gesture, the very whimsical gesture that was present in mannerism, is now again used for some very dark purposes. I love that figure. I love how the arms actually extend to try to cover all that picture plane. And the fact that he is an avid follower of Caravaggio just shows, because it is about chiaroscuro. It is about this dark, enveloping atmosphere. The reason I refer to this composition as quite stark is because it really does feel as a somewhat kind of binary composition. There's light and dark. And obviously the body, the shape of the body of St. Bartholomew, which is actually this almost cross-like shape, is going to be the lightest. But the executioner is actually coming into light, and also the person that is holding St. Bartholomew. So you have this dark atmosphere with these accents of light placed in very strategic positions in the hopes that you would just stay there and just travel and travel and travel round and round the picture. And the most kind of startling part of this composition is a tiny bit of saturation that is present in the pinkness. We have access to the flesh of St. Bartholomew after the sadistic executioner is flaying him, and we now see that he is being skinned alive. So the use of light, of the contrast of light against dark, in terms of composition is incredibly masterful, and the use of tiny, tiny moments of saturation, of that one accent of saturation, it's just incredible. Just to give you a glimpse into the story of his martyrdom, that's all you needed. I mean, there were other paintings of Jusepe Ribera where he's actually far more graphic, and you can see like his whole arm being flayed, but I thought that this tiny moment of pinkness, of redness, amongst, this very light against dark atmosphere was just absolutely perfect. I mean, it's incredibly tragic, it's terrible, but it's a perfect note to almost end the painting in it. It's almost like an exclamation point. And like I said, even though the Martyrdom of St. Philip is a beast of a painting, it's a fantastic painting where almost every single quality of Jusepe Ribera was present within that painting, I think that this painting in particular is actually really, really powerful. And it's kind of cool how it connects with our history, with mythological subject matter, with stories that kind of bridge the gap and show us that these stories were interchangeable, that the characters like Hercules and Samson, and today like Marsyas and St. Bartholomew, they're kind of interchangeable in a way. And it's awesome to see representations of that through painting. And I wanted to say that this very graphic quality of the composition in terms of light and dark really reminds me of Franz Kline. I mean, it's crazy, but when I see this Jusepe Ribera painting, I immediately go to Franz Kline. Like, my mind is immediately transported to a Franz Kline painting. Again, very binary. It's almost like the extension of those two arms would be covered by a Franz Kline brushstroke. And I absolutely love that we can make that connection through painting. And speaking about connections, I've already mentioned that one of my 5 favorite painters ever is Mariano Fortuny. No question. I don't think that's ever going to change. By the way, that's the only show I've had tears running down my eyes. I know that sounds like way too cheesy. It's like, come on, dude, don't. But it is true. It is absolutely true. I saw the retrospective that they did on him, the first time they ever did a retrospective on him, at the Museo de Catalunya in Barcelona. And it was just crazy. It was just amazing. It's one of the most amazing things I've ever seen in my life. Ever. And I always speak about how the universe just gifts you things from time to time. I think that that's one of the things that I'll remember for the rest of my life, because I thought that I was blessed to be just surrounded by probably one of the most insanely talented painters ever to grace this earth. So I was like, oh my God, this is it for me. That was an experience for me. So in connecting Jusepe Ribera and Mariano Fortuny, because great minds think alike, he actually did a copy of a St. Andrew painting that it's at the Museo del Prado in Madrid. And my God, I mean, I've seen Sargent copy El Greco. I've seen people just make studies of paintings. Oh my God. He copied a section of the St. Andrew painting, but come on. I mean, it's as good or even better than the original, but it still kind of is able to retain the essence of the painting. I don't know. Fortuny, that he's the only one who's capable of doing something like that. But it is insane. I mean, you can sense that Fortuny is in there, that the genius of Fortuny is in there, and in some just absurd way, he's also able to invoke the genius of Ribera. I don't know how he did that. That painting of St. Andrew, by the way, is just like, oof, one of the most beautiful paintings ever. But anyways, that's just my mind connecting two of my favorite painters. So that was it for today. We we actually, thought about Spain meeting Italy in Naples, which makes sense, and producing this incredible character that was Jusepe Ribera, making compositions that, yes, owed a ton to Caravaggio, but there was so much Spanish in him that, of course, he was going to talk about the chiaroscuro of Zurbarán and just the genius of Velázquez in his paintings. But again, he was a dark character. Like the stuff that attracted him, let's just say he was weird. And we were able to access these wonderful abstract qualities that make this painting work. Again, very bold, very, very big, almost mark-making and disposition of forms that even though he was telling a specific story, it was just those very obvious abstract qualities that drive that idea through powerfully. So, genius of a painter. We've done High Renaissance and Baroque, and I think for tomorrow we're going to finish off in Romanticism, which I've spoken about my 5 favorite painters, but this is the weird thing, that doesn't mean that they made my 5 favorite paintings, which is kind of strange if you think about it. But tomorrow we're going to do one of my top 5 paintings ever, and I think one of the most beautiful paintings and more complex paintings ever painted. It's insane, but that's Romanticism. That's tomorrow. We're going to travel to Paris. Maybe some of you guys may have an idea of what I'm about to paint. It's incredible. So I'll see you guys tomorrow. Thank you guys for hanging out. Bye.